Good afternoon and welcome to the 2020 South African Women in Sport Foundation National Advocacy Conference. My name is Linda Golashe and I am one of the trustees. As a foundation, we actively contribute to the promotion of equality, equity and justice in women in sport in South Africa, the continent, and the rest of the world. Women and girls rely on our foundation for guidance and expertise with regard to advocacy work, mentorship, research on women in sports issues, and leadership development, focusing on ensuring that women are not hindered in their pursuit of any and every opportunity that men appear to achieve simply on the basis of gender. Our theme this year is Creating a Future That Matters for Women and Sport. We want each and every participant to leave the conference empowered and ready to take charge and make a difference in women's sport. We encourage you to engage and ask questions in the comment sections as we have a panel discussion after all the presentations. Today's topic is a much needed conversation about personal branding and sponsorship. I would like to take this opportunity to now welcome and hand over to our moderator for the day, Ms. Lona Benya. As we have a panel discussion after all.
Thank you very much, Mamu Linda, for that wonderful introduction and the welcome that you have given us on day 2 of this beautiful conference. We come to you on midday today. It is such a pleasure and an honor for all of us to be here today. We know that we are living under bad circumstances due to COVID-19. We know that. Thank you very much, Mamu Linda, for that wonderful conference. My name is Lona Benya, founder of my consulting. What a privilege and honor to be with you today. It is such a pleasure and compliment everybody that participated on day 1, hosted by my colleague Karoshi. It is such an honor that we are here and we are live. We are socially acceptable because Mama Shab yesterday did admit to the fact that we need to get into the global village. Which is actually looking at personal brand as well as personal corporate sectors. Key elements that can promote this participation of women.
We will be back very shortly with getting our sound in order. We apologize for that particular glitch there, but let's get the sound in order and we'll be right back.
To be around all the people that will be the speakers that will be coming through.
We will be back very shortly with getting our sound in order. We apologize for that particular glitch there, but let's get the sound in order and we'll be right back. Lorna, may I ask that you cut the stream on your side if any of the streams are open?
All the people that will be the speakers coming through.
We'll be back very shortly with getting our sound in order. We apologize for that particular glitch there, but let's get the sound in order and we'll be right back. Laura, may I ask that you cut the stream on your side if any of the streams are open?
All the people that will be the speakers coming We are back live. Thank you everybody for your patience as our technical team was actually working on that technical issue around the sound that we had. Remember that when we do all this Zoom and live streaming, we always need to have the essentials. So I have been asked to have my headphones essentials back on, and thank you very much for your patience. We can see the people that are coming through.
We are back live. Thank you everybody
on
for
our
your patience
on our pages.
Actually working on that technical issue around the sound that we had.
And ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor for me to come to you, and also we need to acknowledge the presence of Miss Lauren. Miss Lauren is one of the most beautiful ladies that I've ever met. Apparently, she was a defender. In my playing days, I was a central midfielder. I would have passed you, Lauren, if I had the chance, but fortunately enough, we are socially acceptable, and also we are within the space. Lauren comes to us as an experienced administrator. She has worked with the South African Women's Football Association under Banyana that were the first team in South Africa in the women's section to go and participate in the World Cup of 2016. Lauren, are you there?
I'm here, yes, Lorna.
Right, it is so good to have you. Just like as I was saying earlier on, that you look so wonderful, you look so beautiful. I can see that you have not been stressed by the players that come to you and worry you. And congratulations, Lauren, for the job that you have done so far. We know that you are 3 times COSAFA champion manager.
Yes, Lorna.
Right, it is so good. We are very privileged to have you because we know that you are 2017 G Sports Awards winner, and also I can see that participant. But we want to hear from you, Lauren. If it means that you are born as a woman, what does it actually say? Over to you, Lauren. Right, it is so we are very privileged to have you because we know that you are 2017 G Sports Awards winner, and also I can see that but we want to hear from you, Lauren. If it means that you are born as a woman, what does it actually say? Over to you, Lauren.
Thank you for having me, Lorna. It's been an absolute privilege to be on the panel, and I really hope that I'm able to share some knowledge and experience in my field, and hope I'm able to enlighten some people on how to grow their brand.
Right.
The panel, and I really hope that I'm able to share some Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to start my presentation today with a quote by Jim Colton, who runs a structured program producing great entrepreneurs that stand out and make positive impact. His quote is as follows: "The brand is an expression of who you are, and perhaps, unbeknown to you, you already have that. The brand is what you're known for, what you stand for, and what you stand against, your products and services, and the people you associate yourself with. All of these elements contribute to the way people see you." Before we get into the purpose of my talk today, I would like you to think at the top of your head 5 actions that you know how to place in the digital market. It can be a football, netball, hockey, or athletics. It's quite tough when we are put on the spot and can only name a handful of people. This is often down to less exposure, less television, and less radio time, but also because of the lack of personal branding. By touching on the importance of personal branding, I hope that I'm able to elevate and empower. The importance of personal branding. Personal branding is important in today's economy, and you are the most important part of your marketing strategy.
In everyday life, we see how more and more athletes are using digital platforms to market themselves, both on and off the field. It is a good time to create the space for yourself and showcase your talents, skills, abilities, and of course, your personality. It is important for everyone to have a personal brand to bring you the best opportunities throughout your career. The most important advice that you need to hear from me today is that because this is a unique space, be comfortable with who you are and use such platforms to showcase your uniqueness. Creating a brand is important for your current role, as well as sustaining your career in the future. By creating your own brand, it will allow you to align with brands who will fit into your vision and goal. Always remember that people are much more likely to connect with someone who looks, talks, and acts like them, as opposed to large corporations. So if you build your brand like a business, but still maintain that good personal front, you're guaranteed to inspire trust amongst your audience. What is a personal brand? A brand revolves around an audience that we know. In the current digital space, athletes are constantly in the spotlight and are always being monitored. By building a strong personal brand, you will need to give people an insight into your life as an athlete and always aim to establish recognition and trust. Your personal brand is the real you. It's the you that the world sees. You are able to put out your professional skills, your strengths, your interests and opinions, and send it out for your community to relate to. It's the space where you're in control of the information that you would like to put out. Let's have a look at the 3 personal brands that I have selected. In particular, there's 3 predominant brands in women's football, as that is my current expertise, and of course a space where I'm able to relate with the athletes as well as their brands. There are several leading influencers and brands in every sport, but that doesn't mean that there is no space for you. There is a space in the digital world for every sports enthusiast, whether professional or amateur, an athlete, a coach, or an administrator. What is so great about a personal brand is that even though there are others in the same space, no 2 stories or experiences are identical. And that is where we create the uniqueness of our content. How we want to share our experiences, whether it be in the forms of video clips, pictures, podcasts, or written articles, it is critical that we embark on a strategy to make this possible to be able to receive great returns on your brand. All 3 players that I have chosen today to highlight in my presentation have a similar story. They have all represented the senior women's national team, Banyana Banyana, whether at the Olympics, COSAFA Cup, AFCONs, or the recent World Cup, but yet all have different stories and all have different brands. If we look at Janine van Wyk, she's the Banyana Banyana captain and has branched out into the development sector with her club and football program, and has aligned her personal brand with her business. By aligning her values, she is able to portray herself throughout her program. Thembi Kgatlana, a rising star in the women's game, has also branched out into the development sector by hosting tournaments in her community, which in turn improves and promotes her personal brand. This gives Thembi an extra voice, something other to talk about, besides her great qualities on the football field. Lastly, we look at the ever-rising Amanda Dlamini, who is another great example of a woman in sport who has elevated her brand off the field. Amanda also started her own foundation within her community, creating added exposure to her personal brand, and has attracted ambassadorship roles through Danone Cup SA, Jockey SA, and Sogo Sun. Amanda has also elevated herself into a role at Supersports and is one of our few leading female analysts. As you can see that although these 3 women have followed a similar career path, and all 3 of them have created their own unique identity. The know-how in brand creation. Don't feel rushed when creating your brand. Don't feel that you don't know where to start. Just by starting to create your brand is a milestone, a head in the right direction. And once you have worked out what works best for you, things will eventually fall into place. Always keep on track certain principles when creating and recreating your brand. Is my content relevant? Do I have credibility? What is different or special? Those distinguishing characteristics. Attainability, is my content and my goal realistically achievable? And of course, sustainability. What do I need to be able to keep maintaining my brand? There are other things that you need to keep in mind when creating or recreating your brand. Values, these are things that you believe in as a person. Your voice, the message that explains what to expect from you and how to use your voice within your content. Your voice is also how you engage with your audience. We then move on to your audience. Know who is listening to you, know who you are targeting, and know who you are engaging with. This is where content comes in. Content is extremely crucial. Your talking points, achievements, highlights, how you warm up before a game, what is your nutrition, obviously anything that you feel you want to put out for your followers to engage with. Platforms is another important one. Which platforms to choose and how you are going to relay your message specific to each platform. Innovative, have ideas on how to be different, how to get that message across in a different way, how to get your message seen by all your followers and to be able to trend. And lastly, success, having measurable goals and what you are planning to achieve by building your brand and having your short, mid, and long-term goals. Always do research within your specific field. Read up on articles and follow like-minded individuals. Pay attention to what ignites you inside. It can be music, painting, shopping, or whatever you enjoy the most, but never forget about your main aim, your current sporting career. While you are putting everything into perspective and jotting down what you would like to share with the world, it is important to understand the value of different digital platforms, such as what to share on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, or whichever platform you are using, and create content specific to the platform's viewership. This is why understanding who your target market is crucial when creating your brand and putting out your content. If we look at the graphic that I have on the screen, Facebook is pretty much for everybody, more the older generation, as the youngsters will say. It's a non-profit must, and it's an easy way to share galleries of pictures of your journey. Twitter, that's more for users looking for quick personal interactions. Sometimes you have to be on Twitter a lot more because your feed may go down a lot quicker. So you have to be more interactive on the Twitter platform. Pinterest, which is mainly for women of all ages, sharing different things that they love, recipes, what they shop for, different pictures, warm-up rituals, exercise rituals. Google, that's more for your tech-savvy individuals trying to escape the clutter of Facebook. Instagram, which is a must-go-to for all athletes. It's for mobile users sharing and viewing beautiful photos of different things that they're doing. A lot of athletes use the Instagram story, which is a quick share. It stays up for 24 hours and you're able to take it down when you need to. And obviously LinkedIn is more for professionals exploring causes to share skills. So if you're looking for business-minded interaction, trying to connect with business-minded people, LinkedIn is obviously your place to go. It is also clear to understand that some top-performing athletes will never struggle in creating their brands. Some are much simpler, for example. If you win an athletics meeting, you win the World Cup or an individual award, people are bound to follow you without having to spend time on creating your brand. But when you do have followers, fans, and supporters, it is important to keep them engaged with your progress, what you do in your spare time, and perhaps how you prepare for a big meeting, event, or championship. You also don't want to overshare, as you still need to keep some of your life private. Finding your place and realizing your potential. Tell your story and look to stand out. It is much easier as athletes or sports enthusiasts to find your place within your industry. Your industry allows for your being, but this is the part where you make the most of your career by profiling who you are and becoming more engaged with your fans and supporters. Most importantly, teammates, colleagues, and friends within your sporting code, as well as the sports fraternity, will assist you in marketing your brand. And by actively engaging in their successes and their stories, they in turn will promote yours. It is a great start to assist in empowering and elevating other women in sports. And in turn, you will see great progress in your own brand. By looking at my presentation, we have to take out the most important points when doing a brand. It is up to you to create your brand. Look for innovative ways to share your content. Use your voice. It is unique and it is what will connect you with your fans and followers. And always stay true to your values. This all may seem a bit daunting, but if at first we don't succeed, we try and try again. For athletes, it may be difficult to start and maintain your brand while you try and concentrate on your sporting career. If so, try and align yourself with someone or a team who is able to assist you with marketing your brand. This person should be able to understand the message you would like to put out to the world, but never forget that there still needs to be some sort of sense of personal presence. And this will show if you have little to no interaction. Most importantly, this process is all about being you, what makes you unique, and sharing this you content with the rest of the world. Thank you, Lorna. That is the end of my presentation.
A mistake to have given you this wonderful topic that we have just given to everybody, because you are definitely more than a pretty face. We must also thank everybody that is engaging on our social media pages. We are live on Facebook and we are also live on YouTube. We do have our own hashtags as well, which is hashtag no to GDB or hashtag South 2020 conference. Lauren, I've picked up a few things from your presentation that I would like for us to engage with at a later stage, because one thing that I've noticed is that it's all about who you are, what do you stand about, and also to understand the economical impact that your brand can actually bring into the space in order to elevate you. When you have touched to Tembi and you've touched also to Amanda Dlamini on how they have used their sport into a life beyond playing in football. But nevertheless, I also noted a good synergy with what we normally term as a product life cycle. But this time around, you have also given us something which is called a content and a brand life cycle. But can we pause it on there, because there's a very nice lady that is sitting behind these screens who is also eager to come on board, and I'm pretty sure that discussion of yours of the brand has got a very big significance and a synergy. Thank you very much, Lauren. All your points have been noted, and we do encourage everybody to interact with us on our social media and also leave the relevant comments. Now let's move to the second part of our discussion for today, for our Day 2 conference, which is looking at the issue of sponsorship. When we speak about sponsorship, we speak about a lot of things. Fortunately enough, the lady that we have is called Unqobile Wawagama. We want Unqoba Nqobile. When we say Nqobile, we mean that we conquer. Now let's find out from Unqobile Uguti, how can we conquer in getting those corporates into sponsoring women in sport? However, allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to bring to you Sis Nqobile. Sis Nqobile is an academia. She has been to many different institutions studying the relevance and the significance of women in sport. She has just graduated and also finished a very interesting master's in business administration with a very, very nice topic where she focused on understanding why are there less women in the leadership positions. And I'm pretty sure that at some point when everything has been done by the professors and the supervisors, she's definitely going to share her findings with us. She's also been the head of communications for USA, which is the University School Sport Association. She has also worked with the University of Johannesburg. University of Johannesburg, we know the vision that they have on how they want to tap on the university sport within Africa. And also she has also worked with SASOL. We know the importance of sponsorship, especially in women's football, and the role that SASOL has played with Banyana Banyana as well as the SASOL League, taking them up to the Olympics. Sis Ngobile, we have also seen you coming into the Nedbank Cup. We want to know what is this sponsorship, because I want us to keep on the background what Sis Lorraine has also said, and congratulations on your masters and welcome. By the way, you look beautiful. I must have my wave on the next coming production. You are reminding me of Mamun Tabi. Yesterday, she looked marvelous. She looked like our mother. Can you share with us, Nobile, what is it for me? What is there for us in the sporting sector in terms of sponsorship?
Wow. Hello, Lorna, and hello to everyone that's joined us. Thank you so much for the amazing introduction. I think this is a very, very important topic that we are tackling today. And just to give you a brief background into myself, although Lorna has done an incredible job of doing that, the first time I actually attended the conference, I had just graduated from university. And fast forward a few years later, I now have the privilege of imparting the knowledge that I have, I've gained over the years. And I think being a student for life, I think the journey that I'm going to take everyone on today is more of an educational journey, because I think when I see the conversations that people have on the field, on the sidelines, and on Twitter and on social media platforms, I've noticed that there is a need for us to unpack what sponsorship is before we can start trying to attract sponsorship. I think that is a very unique selling point that we have as women, is that we actually invest in getting to know the back end of things. And I think today's conversation is not to say that we want a piece of the men's pie, but if it is that we cannot get a piece of their pie, then let's bake our own pie. So that's the approach I'm going to take today. So Lorna has introduced me, and I think I'll just go past the slide. So welcome to Marketing 101. And I think before we can examine sponsorship in sport, I think it's very important to understand the relationship that sponsorship has with marketing. So what is marketing? Marketing is basically a function that is adopted by companies in order to develop, to build, and to maintain relationships with customers and stakeholders. So the marketing function is not to hand out T-shirts and hand out pens and branded wear. It's for a purpose. It's to develop and to build and to maintain relationships with customers and stakeholders. And I think as I take you through this presentation, I want you to have in mind either your sponsorship property or a sponsorship property that is doing really well. And as I take you through my presentation, kind of like pick out things that are key standouts and try and link them together. So how do marketers carry out this function? Well, they do this in various ways. They make sure that there's a product or service that is in demand, and they make sure that there is a specific identifiable target market. So it's important. There needs to be a product and service where there is a demand for it and where there is an identifiable target market. And of course, in order for marketers to sell products and services, they need to address the following key considerations. And in marketing, they're known as the marketing mix, or the 4 P's of marketing. And in higher grade marketing, they call the 7 P's of marketing. And what this basically means is ensuring that there's the right product at the right price, in the right place, and using the most suitable promotional activities to make sure that these products are reaching the market. So what promotional activities are available to marketers? Well, they're known as the promotional marketing mix. And basically this includes a whole lot of activities that are available. I'm not going to go into too much detail because we really want to get into the sponsorship part of things. So marketers can decide to use advertising to promote their products. They can use PR. They can use experiential marketing, which can be used very well with sponsorship. They can use cause marketing. They can use digital marketing. And of course, we've seen the rise of digital marketing, especially with social media. And now with COVID, a lot of companies are investing in digital marketing. They can use direct marketing, and those are the very lovely emails that we tend to get with either Uber Eats telling us to buy lunch or to remind us that we don't have to cook dinner. There's an app that can help us with that solution. There's influencer marketing. Of course, we've seen a massive growth sprout in this particular area. And it ties into what previous speaker spoke about in terms of personal branding and putting yourself out there, and of course, sponsorship. So I hope you're starting to kind of connect the dots and to see where sponsorship falls into the greater scheme of things. Sponsorship is a function of marketing at the end of the day. And there's a whole lot of other activities that I haven't mentioned, but I think just to give you an overview of what activities are available to marketers or what disciplines. And of course, each of these activities or disciplines are a very specialized marketing activity. And each of them allow marketers to reach specific target audiences with specific messages that are aimed at influencing purchasing behavior. So again, it's very important to match the activity that you have in mind with a specific target audience, and ultimately, what you want to do with this platform, you want to influence people's behaviors. Which brings me to what sponsorship is. Now, I think ever since I got into the sponsorship space, I get a lot of proposals, I get a lot of requests, but I think the one that humors me the most, and I think this is why I've actually taken this approach with this with my presentation today, is that I get a lot of people saying, "Please, can you sponsor me?" And for me, I think this is why I need to take people on this educational journey, because then I ask the person asking for me to sponsor them, I say, what are you offering me? And the person would say, no, I've been offered, I've made a team, and now I need money to fund my flights to get to France, for example, because I need to play a tournament. And I said, okay, if I give you the sponsorship, what's in it for me as a sponsor? And they're like, nothing. I basically just need to get to France. Which brings me to what sponsorship is, because that is not what a sponsorship is. It's not as easy as me just saying, here's the money, go and do what you need to do. Sponsorship is a business relationship at the end of the day. And it's a business relationship between a provider of either funds, resources, and services, also known as the sponsor. And the relationship is between a sponsor and an individual or an event or an organization, also known as the rights holder, in return for some rights and association that may be used for commercial advantage. So those are the two important aspects of this definition. It's a business relationship at the end of the day, and a sponsor needs to be able to generate commercial advantage from this relationship. And commercial advantage looks differently to different organizations. It could be profit, it could be market share, it could be brand awareness, but there has to be commercial advantage. A sponsorship is also an investment. So, and with any investment, there is an associated return of investment. So it's not as easy as me just giving you funds. I need to get something out of this thing, because at the end of the day, businesses are trying to make a commercial return. So it's an investment in either sports or arts or an event or an individual or a venue or a broadcaster. There's a lot of sponsorship that corporate brands get into, and ultimately the sponsorship property has to yield a commercial return for the sponsor. So it's very important, guys. Like, sponsorship is an investment at the end of the day, and with every investment you are expecting to get a return of investment. The sponsorship rights and benefits that are associated with the sponsorship property have to be commercially attractive. I'm going to repeat this again. The rights and benefits of that sponsorship property have to be commercially attractive, and there has to be enough strategic purpose in order to justify this investment, because at the end of the day, a sponsorship investment is a very, very expensive exercise. You have properties where brands are investing hundreds and millions of rands. So they need to be able to justify that spend at the end of the day. So again, sponsorship properties have to be commercially attractive. And I think it's very important for me to stress the fact that because it is a relationship, every single party has to be able to benefit from this relationship. So as much as the sponsor is the one putting in most of the funds, I think it's important that the rights holder or whoever, the individual, the event, the venue, the broadcaster, whatever the sponsor is investing in, they too have to benefit from this relationship. So now that we know what sponsorship is, I think it's important for me to stress what sponsorship is not. And sponsorship is not a donation. Sponsorship is an investment. A donation is a non-business relationship. So this is where a company would give you funds in order, and they wouldn't necessarily want to generate a commercial advantage from this relationship. So back to the example that I made initially, when someone actually asked me to sponsor them, the correct term they had to use, or the correct way of asking for the funds, was to say, please, can you donate to me? Because in that way, I'm actually providing financial support for a positive outcome. And that's the main difference between a sponsorship and a donation. In the business context, we refer to a donation as corporate social responsibility, or CSR. And I think as I draw the line between the two concepts, I think some light bulbs should be going off for you, especially when you take women's sports into consideration. So what has driven the growth of sponsorship? I think sponsorship has grown for several reasons. It could be due to the fact that certain industries, so the tobacco industry, the alcohol industry, the gambling and the betting industry, they've been given such strict restrictions on how they can communicate their products or how they can sell their products to the market. So obviously they have to think of ways of unconventional ways to actually sell their products. And I think sponsorship is the best alternative they have. And basically what sponsorship does, it provides a very amazing platform for brands and corporates to actually engage directly with consumers' passion points. I think that's a very important term. We connecting with brands, basically, are connecting to what people love. And what do all South Africans love, or what do people in the world love? They love sports. So it's very important to make that note that sponsorship allows brands to actually engage with consumers. And obviously through this engagement, it allows them to increase the opportunity to form deeper connections. And these deeper connections obviously translate to brand loyalty. Sponsorships are also very great at creating content, hence the growth. And obviously with this great content that you are creating, it allows for these conversations to continue on social media platforms or in social gatherings. And when those conversations are happening, then people associate that great content, those great stories with brands, and that's how people actually gravitate to buying certain brands. And I think women's sports has that unique selling point. We tell amazing stories, and I think that's what we should be leveraging off of in women's sports, the great stories that we tell. And ultimately, sponsorship provides a very effective communication platform. And ultimately, brands go into sponsorship because they want to achieve a range of marketing objectives at the end of the day. So in any sponsorship agreement or sponsorship process, there has to be sponsorship players. And obviously the process is dependent on the needs, the objectives, and the priorities of key sponsorship players. So who are these key sponsorship players? Firstly, the sponsors. And obviously, their decision to get into a sponsorship property is driven by the marketing objectives that they have to achieve. Secondly, we get the rights holders, who are the players in the space. Their decisions on which sponsors to approach are influenced by various factors. And one of the factors is the fact that they have financial needs. The third players in the sponsorship agreement are those of agencies. And agencies basically act as consultants or specialists that ensure that both the sponsors and the rights holders are achieving their objectives. And lastly, you get service providers. Service providers are specialists in specific marketing disciplines, such as branding, hospitality, broadcasters, journalists. And basically, those are the key players that make up the sponsorship landscape. So let's get into the sponsoring sport for women. I think now that we know what sponsorship is, where it falls into the marketing space, and what sponsorship is not, I think we can start to build on what we can focus on as women in the industry. Because sponsorship decisions are driven largely by commercial objectives. And ultimately, because they are investments, they need to be driven by the following strategic business needs. So sponsors will get into sponsorships because they are trying to build their brands, and obviously they want to achieve brand awareness. And I think for women in sports or women's sports, I think they need to start to ask themselves very tough questions, such as what is the status and the perception of sponsorship property that you're trying to attract sponsorship for? And secondly, does your target market as women's sports, does that align with that of the potential sponsor? I think those are very important questions that we always need to keep in the back of our mind when we are trying to attract sponsorships. Secondly, sponsors will get into sponsorship agreements and arrangements because they're trying to develop their business. And they will look for properties that provide them with opportunities where they can increase their market share, which is very important. Market share looks differently to different organizations, whether it is that they're selling products or brand awareness, whatever it is, but they need to be able to increase their market share through the sponsorship property. And again, sponsorship properties specifically for women's sports need to ask themselves if their property provides sponsors with the opportunity to access new customers. Very important for sponsors. And also, does your property allow for face-to-face interaction opportunities? It's one thing being able to secure a sponsorship, but then it's another thing when stadiums are empty because they don't allow for sponsors to interact with the fans and the spectators. So again, your sponsorship property or women's sports has to be able to draw in the numbers for sponsors to be able to interact with the target audience. And lastly, sponsors will get into sponsorship arrangements so that they can build strategic relationships and to influence attitudes and behaviors, and overall to get brand loyalty from customers. Again, we need to ask ourselves as women in sports, does our sport allow sponsors to access key stakeholders that they can actually build relationships with? And also we need to ask ourselves, do our properties allow for hospitality opportunities where sponsors can actually leverage off these relationships? It's very important. So again, I'll highlight those the three main reasons why sponsors will get into sponsorship properties: to increase their brand awareness, to increase their market share, and to be able to build strategic relationships. So I think if we get into the crux of this whole presentation, how can women in sports begin to secure, if not to attract sponsorships? Very, very important. I think it's important that it's important for you to align the brand's objectives with that of women's sports. it's pointless for us to approach brands where our objectives do not align. It's very important that in the event that we want to bake our own pie, that our pie speaks to the pie of sponsors. Secondly, we need to ensure that the partnership between the sponsor and women's sports will benefit both of us. It's pointless for us to try and attract funds, whereas it's not going to benefit women's sports. So it's important that it benefits both the sponsor and women's sports. I think it's very important to, while we are trying to structure women's sports in a way that they can attract sponsorship, I think if something does not exist, I think we need to be bold enough to create a new property, if that is the desire. And it takes time to do that. It takes time. We need to look at the market. What does the market have? What is the market overly saturated by? And when we do that, we will definitely identify the gap. And I think that's how Women in Sports is going to start to attract sponsorship. We need to break away from the norm and not try to reinvent the wheel. Don't try and do what the men are doing. Really, it's for us to establish our own lane and to stick in that lane and to make sure we do a very good job in that lane. And I promise you, sponsorship properties are literally going to they're going to fall into our laps. Thirdly, we need to prepare for long-term relationships. Real success takes time. It takes a very, very long time. We need to ensure that the terms are agreed upon are captured in a legally binding contract. So important. It is so important to make sure that we are capturing everything that is spoken about between a sponsor and a rights holder in a contract. We need to be able to identify and anticipate activation opportunities that will create that competitive advantage. So important. It's going to be very important for us to do that. We also need to make sure that we have specialized human resources and sufficient staff to make sure that we can actually execute what we're saying that we can execute as women's sports. We also need to ensure that our operational costs do not exceed our estimated costs, because then this is going to be a futile process. We also need to make sure that we are able to integrate sponsorship with the other marketing activities that we have spoken about. And I think it's very important to mention that with us wanting to attract sponsorship, we need to make sure that we are able to sell exactly what we say that we are going to sell. And lastly, I think it's important for us to take a step back as women and to critically and honestly evaluate our sponsorship properties and to make sure that we are able to deliver exactly what we say that we're going to deliver. And that's basically, that's me in a nutshell, and I hope that we can engage further in our Q&A session.
Your name, your parents did not name you wrongly, because that lecture or that class that you given to us is definitely going to allow us to conquer. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Unqobile speaking to us on what is it for me when it comes to sponsorship. And also we must compliment the South African Women in Sport Foundation for such a good platform for such an engagement and exciting tournaments. But I've noticed a few things from you, Unqobile, that are actually bridging from what Lauren actually mentioned earlier on. Maybe just to understand from your perspective, that you mentioned issues such as the return on investment that these corporate sponsors are actually looking for. You've also given us a good understanding in terms of sponsorship versus the endorsement, which I would like for you to actually elaborate on at a later stage. And also, one of the things that you also mentioned is the landscape that we are currently facing as women in sport. What is it that is making them not to come back? And I want to hold you on that discussion as well. Your last slide is actually taking me to the men amongst the roses that we have today. I will fondly introduce him as my president, because when I was playing for USA, which was formerly known as SASU, he was the president of SASU by then, Ubaba Urex Max Mashego. Apparently, he has been on the industry for more than 30 years. Mr. President, there you are. Thank you very much, Mamutabi, for bringing us Ubaba Urex Max Mashego. We met many, many years ago. It's so good to have you here. I've been told and I've been asked to put in abantu that you have an outstanding performance with and relationships with stakeholders, and us as Abantu Besifazane, we really, really want you to actually teach us on how to forge those relationships. Taking from what Unqobile was actually saying, that you have relationships with politicals, partnerships, you have corporate relations, you have public relations. We want to get into that space as the women in sport. How can we then try to access? We know that you are very much influential with local and also international space. You have organized and restructured so many organizations that are now currently operating on good sponsorship relations. But nevertheless, let me not take your time. Welcome, Mr. President. It is also such a privilege from me being your captain at some point and hosting you today. Thank you very much. And how do we access these sponsorship? Because Lauren spoke fondly about how we should start about bringing the brand from a personal perspective. Nobile is speaking to us that what is it that sponsorship is. Now, if we have all that knowledge that we have gathered from Usis Nobile, how do we then move forward in actually knocking in those doors and saying, actually, this is the business philosophy that we have. This is actually, these are the marketing mix that, as she mentioned, on the 4 Ps. But let me not take much of your time. Say, over to you, Mr. Mashego.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all the beautiful women across South Africa and possibly abroad. Lorna, it's been a while. I haven't seen you in years, and you look beautiful. And yes, it's such an exciting moment for all of us. I'm going to take you through a very important presentation that deals specifically with enabling our women's sport codes, federation, clubs, just to get the background that's required for them to understand how does it happen. I'm so fortunate to have been around, and the presentation, it's definitely a mix of possibly the 2 presenters, 3 presenters that have gone before me, but it also deals with what I know, what I bring across over a long period of time. So we will cover just 3 critical areas: the shift, understanding what has changed. We'll also look into the status of sponsorship, right? I'll also just give you a high clip, particularly on, what is the TV viewership and what does it mean in terms of the bottom line sponsorship for women in sports, using current properties, as Nobile has alluded to some of the areas now. And then obviously, then guide on the things that I believe I'm very strong on. What do we need to change? The things that we must do to make things work. All right. Understanding sport sponsorship is also important to understand where we come from. In the past, sport federation clubs, when they see a company, all they needed was money, right? And that has changed. And what were they looking for? It's quite easy. Awareness on the assets through signage, tickets, and merchandise. I mean, you can go back and think carefully on some of the brands that we have been associated with women's sports back in the day. Ask yourself, why have they not stayed on? And the objective of being part and parcel of that is obviously brand visibility. We want to be seen, we want to be there, but things have changed. And as we speak, and this is so critical because it speaks to how today's sport clubs, federation, women's sports need to understand in responding to some of the things that are becoming necessary. You will never, ever access an opportunity if you do not understand this, right? The current is, obviously, we're still looking for money, right? Because we've got fans, we've got spectators that we want to engage and we want them to be engaged. You know, we believe in value in kind as sport federations, and we want to be seen, associated with brands. And I must say, I still commend the many corporates that have gone the extra mile to support women's sport across the country. You find them in netball and many other sporting codes. And I think it's such an opportunity for me to say once again, Bogoto to all those companies that have been. But there is definitely a shift. It's no longer just about signage, tickets, and merchandise. Understanding this from a sporting federation, it's critical because it enables you to ask yourself, as and when you stand up to go and look for a sponsorship, how aligned are you? Companies that they've indicated, in as much as they're looking for signage, in as much as they still want to be involved with your stakeholders in hosting, we'll term it today as in hospitality, is obviously a level of community engagement. I'll just use a very blunt example. Today you don't struggle to get to a mall because each and every community around South Africa has got a mall of some sort. So your big corporates have got a touch point within a walking distance from where we live. But why are they not sponsoring us, right? There is something in between there. So obviously, the social media has come on board. Today, we are far away from each other. We're engaging with each other. But to what extent are we able to engage broadly and be able to contribute towards that? And obviously, return on objectives and contributing towards the bottom line. Why would they want to be doing that? Why would they be? It's obviously brand marketing, product marketing, socio-economic accountability. So you've seen a lot of companies now, you'd find that, CSR together with sponsorship is, amalgamated into one department. You don't see two different people. You see one person that's responsible for both areas because they speak to the same. A lot of corporates are very much keen to wanting to be following their own employees, making sure that their staff members. I'll use an example. And once again, BMW is produced somewhere around South Africa. Why is BMW not so much sponsoring sport federations in and around the areas where they've got a factory and they're producing the same as Mercedes-Benz in the East London area, in the Eastern Cape? Those are the things that we need to be understanding. You start understanding why are companies not, and why? What is it that they're looking for? It's also about content development, storytelling. Nobile has already touched deeply on that, and I'm not going to dwell too much on that, but very critical, it's stakeholder relations. One of the things that I have established over time, it's that it's very seldom that you'll walk into a company and immediately somebody gives you, a contract that there you are, you have a sponsorship. It's about understanding where you come from. So it's very important that as a sport club, as a chairperson, as a president, be involved, be outside there. Don't go out there because you're looking for a sponsor, but you are creating relationships. As and when we are having tea, introduce yourself, tell them what you do, and to a great extent, they are human beings. They understand, they listen, maybe they are looking for some company, some sporting coach that's responsible in this particular segment, and they didn't know about you. But because they now know you, when they are sitting in their boardrooms, they will remember that actually, there is a sporting coach that has got something of this particular magnitude. And as and when you do submit a proposal, it makes life much easier. The investment that comes with sponsorship, it's not that big in South Africa. Therefore, everybody knows somebody. Sponsorship managers hop from one company to another. It's a fact. So it's important to understand that if you are not involved and engaged, it becomes, you are pricing yourself. It's very critical as well, that brands are looking to make sure that they invest in sporting activities that comply with the regulation. We've gone many years post the Ellis Park situation the incident that took place many years ago, where Visa Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates, even though it was men, but women were part and parcel of, because they do follow football, right? Today, football is being played by women, but the compliance factors becomes absolutely critical. We are sitting today, engaging each other within an environment of COVID-19. To what extent are we as a sport federation, complying with government regulations, because a brand will not be associated with a sport federation that does not comply. It's critically important, you know. Needless to say, I need to emphasize corporate governance. You'll be getting a company's money. How accountable are you? How authentic are you in making sure that you spend the money for what it is meant for? How well are you reporting on the funds that have been given to you? And the last one that I want to think and emphasize on, it's about reputation. It's pointless to take people's money, comply with governance, and you make headlines for the wrong reasons. So it's very, very important that we have a clear understanding of today's sponsorship environment has completely shifted from a one-line objective to quite a number of them. And each one of them becomes very, very critical. And understanding that from a sport federation point of view enables you on the long journey that you need to be engaging on, even way before you move your own boardroom or some of the sporting codes from your own boot to get into some person's in your executive forum to do a presentation in terms of what you are requiring for. And here is a very typical example of just that sums up where we are at. Nobile spoke about properties. There are some properties in South Africa, and in each property there is funds allocated. And I'm just using television viewership, that it's not television that brings money. It's all other aspects over and above television that brings sponsorships. And you can see we've got the National Women's League that was launched last year. But hey, a very important, it takes a while to develop a property. It's a new kid on the block. Silently, wherever you are in the country, think deeply between what I'm saying now, what I've just said, and what Nqobile has said. What is it that the National Women's League might have not done well on? They've got television. They've got teams that are playing, right? Why are they not sponsored? It's a new property, bottom line. So there is a lot that's still required that needs to be built onto it to make sure that it is able to sustainable and people are following it through and through. A property has got a number of dimensions inside it, and you need to locate it and people need to own it across it. And that's how companies would want to be part and parcel of that. So it's very, very critical to be able to go into that. Let's look into how do we make sure that we change the status quo. You know, these are just, I'll call them strategy tips from the old men in terms of where we are. Ask yourself, as a sport federation, as a club, as a women activity event that's taking place, to what extent are you compliant when it comes to governance and the business outlook of the sport? What is governance? Do we have people on the board that have been sitting there for many years? Were they elected properly? Do you have an accountant on the board? Do you have your audited financial statements in line? Are you registered as an NPO? Yeah? How are you engaging your own constituencies? How are you? Those are elements of governance. So before you can even go out, these are critical things that you have to embed and make sure that they're absolutely like crystal clean and organized, because without them, you'll still be without a certain pillar that's a deciding factor when it comes to a company wanting to invest in that particular area. Be professional. Your presentation, your proposal has to speak to what you are selling. Very important. Context. Very, very important. What is it that you actually presenting? What is this? What are you looking this money for? Huh? To what extent are we able to bring in people of note that have been elected properly, that can articulate in the boardroom and be able to find resonance, you know, within a product that you want to see being sponsored vis-a-vis yourself speaking to it. You know, some people can't even speak properly. They are into the sport, they love it so much. So it's very important to make sure that you're able to align those two critically. Prioritize on stakeholder engagement. You will never ever go into a corporate first time and be able to, like, there you are, you've got a sponsorship. It takes an average 24 months because companies also have got budgets. They plan. They look what's going on in the market, right? Teach yourself a very important lesson of understanding what are these corporates doing outside there that I would like to see them sponsoring. Imagine yourself being sponsored by company X, Y, and Z, and be able to follow them through their audited financial statements. How much profits have they made? You know, and when you go into events where they're hosted, even go there. If it means you must pay yourself, go and participate. That's part and parcel of how you create a partnership. Hello, my name is Dudu. I am from USK Ladies Club. Oh, okay, nice to meet you. Somewhere along the line, this person will remember the next time you come around. You remember we met in KwaZulu-Natal in this particular day. So it's very, very important to me. It's absolutely important to make sure that you engage and you find people over and above outside of the platform with you as and when you're looking for a sponsor. I cannot overemphasize that a sponsorship proposal, it's an activity within a federation business plan or a strategy. Do you have one? Do you have a business plan? A business plan, it's a critical document that outlines your plans broadly on what is it that you want to achieve. You might be looking for funds for a specific strategic objective that is number 5, and you've got 10 of them. A company would want to know, do you actually have a vision? Where are you actually going? If we invest in you today, where will you be 3 years from now? So it's a very, very important element that you need to embed way before you even go out and engage with companies outside there, that you must have your own business plan. What is it? So basically, the environment has changed. It has changed that we have to be articulate, we have to be organized, we have to be business-like in everything that we do. Brand alignment, do outreach, understand what is it that you're offering and how it links to the strategy of their prospective sponsor. Each company has got a specific niche. You've got clothing, you've got the banking, financial sector, you've got your food sector. So you will never have one sponsorship proposal that is specifically generic that meets everybody else. Take time to respond specifically to each and every company, meaning spend a lot of time reading what that particular company is doing, what is it about, what are they intending to do broadly. And in that way, you'll be able to put together a very important package that enables them to be able to. It's all about being relevant as well. Walk the talk. And by the way, it has to find relevance in the documents that you're saying. I might be a nice talker, but when I leave, it is the likes of Mobile that will sit with my proposal and articulate it in the broader board. To what extent does the document speak on behalf of me as a club from Limpopo, from Mpumalanga, in my absence? So it has to be as close as possible to what you have said, what you will do, and what you've put on paper. And never underestimate the importance of servicing the partnership. It's a partnership. And I need to emphasize that it's a partnership because you're looking for something, a company will be looking for something. It just does not end in people just dumping money onto yourself. So it's very, very important that you ultimately deliver on the promises that you have made. Very, very important. Again, I cannot overemphasize the one that speaks to the other, right? Never underestimate the importance of servicing the partnership, which links to the politics involved within how a club, a federation, right? 98% of sports in South Africa do not have the finances to be able to employ, executives, serious staff members that can deliver on it, CEOs and whatsoever. So to a great extent, you've got people that are voting into the office to go and deliver on something else. So to what extent are you able to make sure that that which you stand for as a sport finds itself in the administration, distribution, and articulation of your all element and your touch points to be able to service the particular point. So it's very, very important. And to a great extent, this is basically where things go wrong. To a great extent, we make headlines for the wrong reasons. And to a great extent, companies don't want to associate themselves with sporting codes that have got very, very tarnished. It's very, very easy, to lose 10 years of a good brand as a sport within a sport federation. And it takes you 10 years, more or less, to be able to be known as being articulate and delivering on the promise. So it's very, very important to be mindful on these two critical, the politics that are involved in the administration. It does not mean that politics are wrong. We cannot be. We will not be having South Africa if we didn't have politics. So politics are there. They are part and parcel of what we do. When you take a decision to appoint a manager, there is some level of politics involved. But are you articulate in understanding that the manager that you are appointing to lead a particular team, can she read, write? Can you present reports? Those are just basic things that are critical. When they go and meet a company, can they explain what they've done? Why are they wearing another brand, a competing brand, when they're actually sponsoring you? Then the person must be able to say, no. In actual fact, we had a problem last night. Our things were stolen. So it's just the clothing that these particular young people, they have, but if that person can't even explain that, it becomes a problem. If you cannot have the right people to deliver on it, let me be honest with you, second the right people, find them. Because it's very, very important to be well represented on all fronts. If you do not have such, listen to me, hire them. They are there. They are companies. They might request 10%, 15%, but you know what? Is the 10%, is the 15% that is critical, because it will define how you will be received by companies outside there. So I think that's in a nutshell, basically my presentation today. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, you've actually made me to also do some introspection on the small business that we have started. I think the presentation that you have just given us is actually going to open a very good platform for all our viewers at home, the people that have been. Thank you very much for everybody that has been making the comments. And I think Mam Muntami and the whole board and the trustees of the South African Women in Sport Foundation, when they created the theme for this discussion, mentioning that they are trying to create a future that matters for women in sport, they were actually wanted to hear the things that you have articulated too. But I want to park you there, Sam, because I've noted that you've mentioned critical issues such as the relations, the stakeholders. How do you keep the people that have invested in you to give them the return on investment that Snobile was actually speaking about? I'm going to bring it back. The compliance factors, the governance, the accountability, the reputations, as well as the professionalism. If now I can quickly go to all the guests that we have so that we can start the discussions. There is Snobile coming back. There is Lauren. Lauren, I want to start with you. Mr. Rex Max Mashego is actually mentioning some critical issues such as the reputation and the professionalism. On your presentation, you mentioned the different social media platforms that the young athletes, the athletes at home, the different sporting federations that we have, they can tap on. Do you think that these social media platforms can actually play a prominent role in creating those reputations that he was actually speaking about? And also from an individual perspective, the wrong headlines that he actually mentioned, do you think that our athletes are quite aware of the extent of how they can use their social media platforms to be a voice? And then I will come to you, Mobs.
Thanks, Lorna. Yes, I think it's important for our athletes first to be educated on the do's and the don'ts of social media, especially when they're trying to create their brands. The minute you're an athlete, the minute you're a professional, the minute you are on our TVs and in our newspapers, people want to see what you do. People want to follow you. They want to know what you eat. They want to know what time you go to sleep. And, I think we kind of lose hope on the fact that these players or athletes are not fully educated on what social media is there for. And I find that, you know, even if you're not trying to build your brand, if you are there on social media, you are a brand and people will look for you. I mean, I know we search a lot and we find all these fake accounts of people that are trying to pretend to be the athletes, and it's to get the followers and to get the brands behind them. So, I mean, absolutely, there has to be some sort of brand authenticity. There has to be a meaning of being real and being genuine and sharing this kind of content with the world. You know, you have to have that integrity. You have to have that respect. You have to have the accountability. So, yes, to stay out of the headlines and share things that you shouldn't be sharing, or saying things that you shouldn't be saying, or, you know, getting involved in things that you actually know nothing about, will end up being in bad headlines. And, you know, as athletes, social media sometimes, depending on which platform you use, there's negative social media, there's positive social media, and we see a lot of athletes getting stuck in this hole of negativity. And it's so easy to criticize on social media. Sorry, it's so easy to share your opinion on social media, not understanding that, you know, these athletes are also human and these athletes also have feelings, and what they see on social media can affect their performance. And this is where it comes to the education part. And it's easy to say this is what we need to do to build our brand, but we need to have that education and that guidance to say it's not all about social media. It's also about what you do, how you carry yourself. And if I see you in the street, I want to be able to interact with you the same way that I interact with you on social media. So it is a very important conversation to have with athletes, and we're all learning. You know, social media hits us with a bang. Everybody's out there. We're all fighting for likes and fighting for comments and fighting for, I actually don't know what, because at the end of the day, we are here to compete and we are here to be athletes and we are here to fully focus on our field and make sure that we do our jobs to the best of our abilities.
Right, thank you very much, Lauren. No, the South African Women and Sports Foundation is actually, the vision is all about creating a future that matters. Now, the president, Max Mashego, mentioned something that, do we have the right leadership to actually create that that platform for the young girls that are sitting at home? You mentioned in your presentation issues around the marketing mix, the 4 Ps and everything. Do we have the business plans? How do we know that players that are playing on the Sasol League from Limpopo, Eastern Cape, wherever, do we have the right business plan? If not, how can we engage, or how can we try and improve in those societies where we know that the importance of the business plans? Do we have them? If not, what could be the reason or the disadvantages of not having a business plan?
Okay, thank you so much, Lorna. I think that's a very, very important question. I think if we take a step back and we understand sports as it is, as soon as sports enters into the professional aspect of sports, it becomes a business. I think that's what we need to understand. It is a business. And with every business, we need to take ourselves and take everything else just as serious. So if you do not understand the professionalism of sports, like Urex has mentioned, and Lauren has also alluded to it, we need to educate ourselves on that. And education comes in different shapes and forms, whether it is that you're educating yourself via academic qualification, whether you are engaging people that have walked the path before you, whether you are engaging specialists in different areas, or whether it is that if you do realize that you are lacking somewhere, are you then trying to engage the people that have that knowledge? Sports has grown leaps and bounds. Sports in countries is a major contributor to the GDP. So we've moved away from sports being something that we play off the school to it being a professional thing. And as soon as it becomes professional, brands that are going to sponsor properties, they want a return on investment. They want a commercial a return. So we have to make sure that we structure our sports in such a way that that they are attractive to sponsors. So again, I think we have to go through an education process. And again, I don't mean education in the formal way, but we need to make sure that we are taking a step back. Let's look at how our properties and our sports are structured, and let's now start to build sports and properties that are attractive. And if we don't know how, I think we really need to put our hands up and say we need help. And I think that's how we're going to start to build a future that matters. When we start, if it means that we need to break everything down, break the structures down, then that's what we have to do. But there's a lot of people who are putting their hands up saying, we are here for you. We are here to help. We are here to offer our services. We are here to serve. Let's see how we can then start to build something that is lucrative, something that is attractive, and more importantly, something that is sellable.
Thanks, Mo. I see you nodding a lot there, Mr. X-Max. I think you want to add on what Nkobile was saying.
Absolutely. I think the critical thing is that, maybe the emphasis in just prioritizing that a business plan of a sport, it's not necessarily done so you can get a sponsor. It's done to make sure that the sport is progressive and it's got a direction, it's got somewhere where it goes. So when you've got, you would call them properties, activities within the business plan, right? It could be age group related. It could be certain events that come across. Those are activities that ultimately concludes a comprehensive business plan that speaks to a progressive process within the sporting for sport. So it's critical that a business plan is designed not because you're looking for a sponsor. It is designed to make sure that there is a direction that guides the sport. You can say 10 years down the line, where were we? Where are we? Right?
Yes.
I mean, I've already indicated to you what has happened to, the sponsorship market. We've got a background there. There was just one line. Today, hey, believe you me, there is no company that wants to give you money and it does not impact their bottom line. I'm whispering. It's a fact, right? It might be indirectly, but they will want to know to what extent does it bring them customers back into their space. So it's very, very important that sport, in quotes, across gender groups must have, and you don't do it because it's making television headlines. It's just an important guide that helps you to navigate to say, on a yearly basis, this is what we are planning to do. How are we going to do it? By when must we have done what? It's very, very important. And what will it cost us to do that? Now, then you get to that point to say, where are we going to get the money to do that? And that's where the sponsorship comes in. And we're able to then engage extensively, in that particular area. So it's a very important process that's there. And I need to applaud. Women's sports to a great extent have got educated people, but to a great extent, we normally sit back as ladies. We believe the men must go and do the job. It's about time. Ladies, assume men, let's stand up, let's go do it ourselves. It's time.
Right. Thank you, sir. Now let's put some practicality here. You mentioned something that is very thorny, which involves Lorraine in terms of the football history that she has when it comes. Your team, Lorraine, has just recently been promoted to the National League. Mr. X-Max is actually mentioning that the viewership and the coverage that we get perhaps might not be playing the role that it should be playing in terms of attracting the sports, the sponsorship. Do you think, what do you think, Lorraine, needs to be done in order for that particular league to actually, because it's the highest participating league that we have right now. I don't want to mention people's names and people's what, but I just want to find out from you, from a team manager's perspective and somebody who's very involved with the day-to-day running of a club, if what needs to be done in order to attract these corporates that maybe Nobile and Mr. X-Max are actually speaking about, in order for it to have that leverage where we can see the different teams having so many endorsements on the soccer kits and other things. What's your opinion on that?
my opinion would be directed to Mr. Raxmax and to Nkobile there. But, you know, it's an important conversation to have. You know, I think women's football is growing. We see it across the world. We see these teams with multiple sponsorship rights on their kits. And we look at ourselves and we say, what are we doing wrong? And I actually spoke about this on a social media platform quite recently where we engaged a little bit. And what more do we need to do? And that's my question. Like, yes, it's ROI, and yes, you know, what does the corporate get back if it's going to invest in the sport? A while back, we had a conversation a couple of years back of our female footballers specifically are not marketable. That's a little bit questionable for me. You know, we have great female athletes. We have such great marketable athletes. I look at the Simpiwe Dludlus and Amanda Dlaminis. I mean, they are marketable. Our female athletes are marketable. You know, so yes, I think on our side, we're going into the National League. What we need to do is engage partnerships with financial we need financial revenue. We need money, and we can't just rock up at the doorstep of a company and say, you know what, we need money. We're women's football. We're playing in the highest league. Please, can you help us? Because like they said earlier, what can we give back to them? And I think that's the guidance we all need. You know, I'm not a sponsorship specialist. I'm in the same situation. You know, we knock on doors all the time. And as a club that I'm working with, we are signing many partnerships. We are signing many deals, but none of it is financial. And I think that's a big talking point is, yes, we can get a kit sponsor, and yes, we can get a ball sponsor, and yes, we can get a hydration sponsor, but how are we able to pay our athletes? How are we able to professionalize the sport if there's no financial stability for the clubs? So, you know, I'm in the situation, I'm knocking on doors, I'm ready to break them down, but like we said earlier, we need that guidance. And I've been involved in football many years. I still need to be educated on that side. And I think it's a part where we all come together and say, you know what, how can we together, you know, really elevate women's football so that corporates can come inside and financially assist the female clubs?
Right. I'm glad that you are an administrator, because Mr. Rexmax was actually going to say what I said earlier on, that I was going to move past you, Lauren, if we had played together back in the days. But you are mentioning a critical issue, that you are signing deals, but those deals do not have a financial revenue. Now, on your conversation, I followed your conversation with Nkobile on Twitter. Nkobile is saying that this thing of taking women in sport as one of the things where corporate social investment programs are actually being done, it needs not to happen. Nkobile, I want to bring you in here because Lauren, from an administrative perspective, is saying we are signing the deals, but the deals do not have the financial injection. And you have an opinion that they should not be treated as on a corporate social CSI only initiatives. And I'm also going to bring you in here, Mr. Rexmax, because we need to understand that this return on investment that you mentioned on, what is it that the corporates are actually looking for? Nkobile, could you please elaborate between those sponsorships that are actually money generated and those that are not money generated, and what causes them to be like that?
Okay, cool. Thank you so much for the question. I think this is a very important conversation that we are having and that we need to continue having. I think it's also very important to take a step back and to realize that as women's football, as women's sports, we are on the back foot. We are on the back foot, and let's just address that elephant in the room. So for us to try and accelerate ourselves to the point where men's football is in the country is not practical. And with saying that, I think it's not so much as us saying, what are we doing wrong? I think it's important for us to celebrate what we are doing that is right. And whatever that is right, let's continue doing that, because we are definitely doing something that's so right. And I think we're doing it so right to the point that we're doing it even though we don't have the financial backing. And I think, and it's not something that you have to answer now, Lauren, but I think you also need to ask yourself, let's say a brand had to say to you right now, here is 5 million Rand. Tell us what you're going to do with this money. Would you be able to give us right now, would you be able to tell us this is exactly what we're going to do with that money? So I think it's also important that in the background, you're also already starting to plan, and it's that business plan that Rex Max was talking about. It's in the background. It's those are the things that you need to prepare yourself for, because you don't know what spaces you might find yourself in. Like right now, I might be mandated by my company, which I haven't been, but I might have been mandated by my company to say, here, you've got a budget, and it's for you to find a property. And maybe you might have said something that might have attracted me to that opportunity, and I would have said, tell me more about it. And in that split second, you literally have that opportunity to sell that thing to me. So I think as women, also as women's sports, we always need to be ready. And we also need to know, where do we see ourselves in the next 5 years? And I think also touching on the fact that we're on the back foot, I think we need to look at the women's football in the different countries that are doing well. Let's look at the USA. I think the USA women are doing, in terms of their football, they are doing amazing things, to the point where their women's football in the USA is so much better than men's football. Let's look at that. What are they doing that is so amazing? And how long has it taken them to get there? It's probably been a very, very long journey. And that's exactly what sponsorship is. It's a long-term relationship. It is a long-term relationship. You're not going to see, even if I had to give you, or even if a brand had to give you 5 million Rand in year one, they wouldn't see their return on investment in year one. They maybe wouldn't even see it in year 3 or year 5, for example, but they need to see that potential. There has to be that potential that they can then take to a greater forum, and literally, because sponsorship managers have to account to a greater forum, and they need to say, this is, we've identified this opportunity. They have a unique selling point. They speak directly to our target market. And if we give it a bit of time, exactly what Sasol has done. Sasol is in year 11, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And they have walked the journey with the Sasol League and with Banyana Banyana. And they have said, we're gonna walk this journey with you guys, especially considering that they come from a position where they were sponsoring the Springboks. That's a federation that they have the development structures in place. They have whatever that they do that is working for them. And they move from that and they move to women's football. And they say, okay, cool, we are sponsoring a national team, but it's a national team that's not necessarily on the same level as the Springboks. How can we then support them so that they are reaching that level that we want them to reach? And it's taken a very, very, very long time. And eventually we've gotten there. But now how do we continue with that momentum? I think that's the very, very important part. But I think the key takeaway here is that we're on the back foot. And how do we then structure our sports or women's football? And it's an ongoing conversation. There is no absolute solution at this present moment. There is no absolute solution, because again, ROI, we cannot escape this ROI thing, because again, sponsorship is a very, very expensive exercise. I mean, sponsors are putting in 50 million Rand at one go. So they definitely have to go and account to a CEO, CFO, and say, from this 50 million Rand, we have then made a profit of X amount of rands. And I think if I need to just take it a step back also, I think we as women's football and as women's sports, I think we need to not look at the brands that are sponsoring men's sports. Let's look at what speaks to us as women specifically. Let's look at those products, and let's see what kind of relationships we can build from there. And I think Rex, I think we might have lost Rex, who I think would have expanded further on this conversation. But I think do not feel bad that you're not getting support in terms of revenue, which I understand is exactly what we need to take women's football to the next level. But think about other teams that don't have a kit sponsor. They would love to have a kid sponsor. So celebrate that win. Think about other teams that don't have a hydration sponsor. Other teams don't have, they don't even have water bottles. So not to say that we must appreciate the bare minimum that we get, but it's important to take note that those bare minimums is exactly what has taken JVW to the National League, for example. So celebrate those wins. So important. But I think all in all, it's an ongoing conversation, and yeah, I think together we can take women's football and sports in general for women to the next level in SA.
Right, thanks, Mo. Thank you very much, everybody that is watching this live session brought to you by the South African Women in Sport Foundation. We see all your comments. We are taking note of them. Please do feel free to engage on our social media platforms. We have our own hashtag, which is No to Gender-Based Violence, and also South's 2020 conference. Now, before I come to you, Beck, no. Lauren, how important is it for players to understand that there is a difference between sponsorship and endorsement? How important is that? Because I remember that Mobile on a presentation said that a lot of people knock on the door and say, can you give us money? Can you give us money? In terms of branding, Lauren, would you say that there is a difference between sponsorship and endorsement? If so, what would be your take on it?
Yeah, again, obviously there's a big difference between endorsements and sponsorships, between ambassadorship roles as well. And it is, I think, we'll go back to education, we'll go back to being authentic. It's all about education. And just like some of us who work in administrative roles don't know the correct sponsorship procedures, some athletes and some individuals don't know those procedures either. I mean, they were born to play netball, they were born to play football. Some of them have degrees, they get to play their sport through their bursaries or their sponsorships during at school, which now they've got to focus on their sport and they have to focus on their education, which is different to what we are trying to get them to understand. So, I mean, there is a big difference. They need to understand the difference between the two. And again, it's hard to be an athlete and put your brand out there, work on your brand, ask people for endorsements, ask people for ambassadorships. It's hard. And a lot of the time we find failure in athletes or in individuals because we compare ourselves. So we look at a Tembi, for example, and we say, okay, but Tembi's sponsored by so-and-so and so, and Amanda's sponsored by so-and-so, and Fifi's sponsored by so-and-so. What's wrong with me? And we're not actually looking at our unique, authentic self and what can we offer the sponsor or the endorser, or, we look at the boot sponsors in particular. It's extremely hard. I mean, to buy yourself a pair of boots every 3 months, and footballers need 2 pairs of boots every 3 months, it's $3,000. You have to invest in yourself. Now you're looking for a boot sponsor. Now you actually want Nike and not Adidas because you're a Nike person. So there's a lot of education. There's a lot of help that these athletes need. They need managers. We talk about agents. Agents is there for the athletes at the top. An agent is there for professional athletes to get them into a team. These players need managers. They need guarders, if I can call them that, because not all players can have managers and not all people expect to share their knowledge for free. We all have our own busy lives. We all have our own things that we need to deal with, but it's just offering them that little bit of guidance and helping them understand what their value is to get, like we said, the endorsements or the sponsorships or the ambassadorship roles.
Right. Thank you, Lauren. And I think one of the things that you mentioned earlier on, Lauren, was the issue of the social media. And it's very nice to have heard the founder of SAWASF, Dam, yesterday acknowledging the global village that we have found ourselves in, because now we need to align our brands in accordance to what the world, just like what Sis Mobile was actually alluding on, in terms of how America is actually doing so well in terms of women's football. But we are actually proceeding towards the end of this session, and we must acknowledge and applaud the different comments that people have been coming forward with. We are taking notes of them. They will be uploaded on our different social platforms. Now, the one question that is actually coming up now is what could be done out of a federation to have a professional league. Talking from the rugby perspective, do you want to take that, Mobile?
I can try that. So I think no brand or no organization wants to associate with a federation that firstly does not have their house in order. If I am coming as a sponsor, I am not expecting to be interfering with rugby matters, and I'm not expecting to be interfering with football matters. That is your specialization area, and as a sponsor, I'm expecting you to have your house in order in that regard. So in terms of those aspects, those are the aspects, if they're not in place, those are the ones that are going to literally, they're going to scare off any sponsor. So it's first of an internal job has to be done firstly, an internal job, and make sure you have your house in order, but also make sure that you have so much potential that even if it is that you're just selling a concept to a sponsor, that they can already see, they can buy into that concept. So I think in terms of a professional league, we need to look at the development structures. We can't just already jump into the professional league part of things. For a professional league for women in rugby, firstly, are the development structures in place? If it is that you want to put a professional league in place, are the clubs that are going to be able to qualify, and are the clubs that are going to be able to feed into the professional league? Because it would be very embarrassing if you had to secure a sponsor for a professional league whereas you don't even have players, right? And if there are players, are there clubs that can carry the players? So before professional league starts, there has to be, and maybe this is a lack of insight in terms of the rugby structures, and in terms of clubs, if they already have their structures. But I think a good starting point is to ensure that development structures are there. And then with development structures, are there clubs? Are there clubs that can actually feed into, and they can affiliate, and they can do all those things to the professional league? And I think those are the starting points. Those are the starting points, and everything else after that, after you've started playing the rugby, then everything else should be able to fall into place. You should be able to have a value proposition that you're able now to say to a sponsor, we now have a professional league up and running. Is it possible for you guys to sponsor us? And I think also it's important for me to re-emphasize the fact that, again, we'd be on the back foot. So we cannot as a woman professional rugby league, we cannot expect to have the same things that the men have, because the men, I think their rugby, the franchise rugby is already, they are way ahead of us. They've got a fan base, they literally have everything. So we are starting from a point of nothing. And from that nothing, where can we then aim towards in the next 5 years? Cut it up into really small, achievable bits that those are stepping stones to ultimately having a proper professional rugby league set up for the women.
Thank you very much. Welcome back, Mr. Rex Max. We almost lost you there. It's always good to have you back. Lauren, I want to speak to you regarding the issue of the post-COVID possibilities. Do you think there are any post-COVID-19 possibilities of sponsorship within the women in sport landscape?
Well, there wasn't a clear guideline before COVID, so I'm certain there's one after COVID. But I think, we need to be realistic. There are certain companies that, haven't lost too much due to COVID. There's other companies that have lost major things due to COVID. But I think it was quite clear, we need to align women's football and women's netball and women's rugby with specific brands. We can't be going to X for men to ask them to sponsor the women's football team. So we have to be specific, and I think we have to knock on doors. We have to say, we're looking for a sponsor. Like Nkobile said, here's our business plan. Let's be honest with each other. Can you afford to sponsor? Do you have budget for us? Is women's sports in your scope? And if it's not in your scope, when will it be in your scope? Because we're going to see you in another 3 months. And I think we're so scared of failing. I can knock on a door and they'll close the door and I'll say, okay, well, no one wants to sponsor us. Meanwhile, we have to keep knocking because they're going to get sick of hearing from us. And either they're going to say, listen, no is no, or okay, we're going to take a chance and let's see what comes of it. But there's a lot of things post-COVID that's going to take a back foot, and we just have to take it as it comes. And unfortunately, it affects everybody. It doesn't just affect women in sports.
Right. Thank you very much, Lauren, because there's been a lot of uncertainty whether we did have this sponsor, we did have these brand relations before. But I want to, can we, because we have 10 minutes to go now, Mr. Rex Max, I want us to position the issue of women in sport. When you spoke about brand positioning, how can we best position the brand women in sport, not particularly looking at football only, but the brand of women in sport in general, which is your cricket, your rugby, your tennis, and everything, because there are many avenues that we can use in terms of positioning our brands, where we look at value-based brands. Are we looking for quality-based brands? How can we then position the brand women in sport from your own perspective, using that experience of 35 years that you have? Please, we need to tap on those doors. We need to accelerate that sponsorship request. But how do we then position these brands in order to acquire that sponsorship? Are you there, Mr. Rex Max? Let me quickly go to No.
All right. So I'm going to just take a journey backwards and begin to appreciate that women. I am here. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Yeah, I'm saying let's just take a step backwards. One of my experiences is that women in sports have almost treated themselves as a Cinderella in sport. The business etiquette, the critical, the seriousness that's needed to deliver on sport has been taken as is the by the wayside. I think we need to begin there. And that's why I was very critical in saying perhaps it begins by us starting by just making sure that every sport that we have, do we actually have a business plan? A business plan tells a story. It tells a story about where we come from, where are we going to, what do we want to achieve. I think if we've got that across the board, we've got a step of where we're going. I'm not going to mention sporting codes. I've dealt with a few of them, and I've discovered that as and when I wanted to engage with them, I've had to help them inform me about themselves. Now, it's even making it very difficult to even proceed and take the property to a company when the sport itself cannot identify itself. Where does it come from? And so we've got to have a story that we are presenting. The second critical issue is that, of course, we're so fortunate. Education, it's not an option. It's a fact. We've got to try and bring people that have got the know-how to lead us in the spaces of importance. One of the beautiful things about South Africa and possibly Africa is that actually we've got more women. I would argue and said most sponsorship managers across corporates are women. But why are we not making it? It's simply because we only perhaps undersell the properties that we want to, right? And Lauren spoke about a number of partnerships that they've got. People that are giving products and whatsoever. You build from that. 5 years from now, that will convert. It will elevate itself into something tangible. You don't deliver on it because it's like, okay, value in kind, I'm not going to treat it seriously. Take everything serious all the time, because by so doing, we are just increasing the amount of weight that you want to bring on board within this environment. The sponsorship environment across the board where men are involved has got history. right? For us to change that history, we have to create a new path. We have to develop a certain identity as women in sports that speaks to us. What is that? We don't have to compete. We don't have to compare. We need to develop properties and identity that resonate with us. We're different. We're different. And I know of certain companies that are doing so well silently in making sure that they follow women sport across the country in their activities. You need to see that across the board. But part of the reason why it's not generic is because we find ourselves as an almost like, precedent that someone is down, another one is up. So we need to raise the bar. The beautiful thing as well is that to a great extent, most women are educated, far ahead of men. Right? We need to take that education and make it meaningful in the sport that we love. We seem not to bring closer the ability to what we know, what we've read in the book, and make it real. Men, they always say is very, very structured. He sees one thing at a time. As women, we see so many things at a given time. And that possibly reduces our opportunities to be focused. We need to increase on that and make sure that we deliver on it. Then the other things are the generic things that we have to do all the time. We don't do it because it's sometimes. No. Once you start, you never stop. That's how you build a brand.
Thank you, Mr. Mashego. We are pressed with time. We had the most important thorny issue that we are underselling ourselves as women because we don't want to go out there and take it to our hands. Ngobile and Lauren, I'm just going to give you a minute each so that we can wrap it up because we have about 3 questions that will be coming up that we need to answer. Your closing remarks, Ngobile. Or let me quickly take this one. How do we address the lack of infrastructure facilities available? Most venues are already occupied and overused for clubs that focus mostly on the gents. How do we address the lack of infrastructure and facilities? Do you want to take that, Mr. Rexmax, in less than a minute, please?
Yeah. It's part and parcel of the business plan. If you don't have a business plan, you will not know what you need.
Thank you, sir.
Those facilities that are being built, it was either government money or local government money. Somebody made sure it is included in the plan. That's it. Business plan.
The business plan. Understanding ourselves, sponsorship, branding, Sismobile and academia who gave us a very good lecture on how to use the marketing mix, on how to use the different strategies. Your closing remarks, Sismobile, we know that you have done such a wonderful job and also hosted us well in your presentation with around what is in for me.
I think my closing remarks will basically be not for women to be too hard on themselves in the space. I think let's understand that we're on the back foot, but then how do we then start to gain that momentum? I think we need to continue having to have ongoing conversations, not wait for August to come, then we start to tackle women's issues. Keep on having ongoing sessions where we are educating each other, because I might know something in a specific area in sports, but I might not know, and I might not understand the things that happen on the ground. So I think we need to have ongoing conversations where we're literally educating ourselves, because there's so much power. There is so much power in knowing everything about sports, not just what you do specifically.
Thank you, Mo. Lauren, what is your message to all the players out there who are wishing to be like your Janine van Beek, Amanda Dlamini, as well as Imbuzi Lapayana? What would you say to them in just less than a minute, please?
My message to all athletes, all women and all individuals in life is always be true to your values. Look inside yourself and put yourself out there. Stop comparing yourself to other people. You have a story to tell. Everybody has their own story to tell. And don't be scared. Don't be scared to take that step. Lastly, and most importantly, individually, we can do so little. But together, we can do so much. And if we all stick together, we can achieve great things in
Right. Thank you very much to the panelists who have gathered here today with us. Unfortunately, that is the end of the very nice interactive social media session. We are socially responsible. We are within we are within the space. You will get those, for those who have missed this big and nice interaction, they will get it. It will be streamed, it will be kept there. But we are not leaving you without the words of Umama Untami. She said we must all tell all of you Uguti she is very much proud of each and everyone who is playing a role in creating an awareness of making sure that the future for the young girls is actually accelerated in the beautiful Republic of South Africa. Let us all stay safe. The COVID-19 is still all out there. You are more than the pretty face that everybody thinks that you are. You have a role to play in finding that sponsorship. And just like as Mr. Rex Max said, let us have the good leadership on the right positions so that those business plans can actually come forward. Thank you very much, everybody. My name is Lona Pena. It was such an honor and a privilege to host you today. And thank you to the South African Women and Sport Foundation for the wonderful job that you are doing in actually making sure that your vision of ensuring that the beauty of that child through sport is actually seen. South Africa, we have a responsibility to play as a team. Let us play together. Let us not play individually. Just like Lauren has said, we have so much. There is so much that we can do. If we play together, gold will be guaranteed. Thank you very much, and God bless you all.
Good day, my name is Linda Kholashe, and I am one of the trustees of the South African Women in Sport Foundation. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you've learned a lot more about personal branding and sponsorships, especially at a time when resources are scarce and when authenticity is the name of the game. Thank you to our moderator, Ms. Lona Benya, for guiding the conversation, and to our speakers, Ms. Lauren Duncan, Ms. Mwawile Gama, and Mr. Rex Max Mashiko. Thank you for sharing your expertise with all our viewers. A special thank you to my fellow trustees, the organizing committee, and the National Lottery Commission. And to all stakeholders who shared the conference on their respective platforms. I hope you are ready to work on your personal brand and that you'll begin to draft those proposals. We look forward to engaging with you tomorrow as we unpack how women can take up space.